Welcome back to the FPL video and podcast. This will be the best wildcard team for Game Week 6. I've activated the chip myself this week. It's a very popular time to activate and deploy this chip, and I'll discuss an updated version in the team selection podcast, as well as an updated wildcard video coming right up on this channel. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to about 300 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. We've made a lot of progress in the last couple of weeks, so thank you very much for your support. You can check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. Patreon.com/DylanRCM. There's the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. David Raya has been in sensational form this season, winning countless Player of the Match awards for Arsenal across all competitions. He will likely play against Bolton in the Carabao Cup this midweek, as the substitute goalkeeper Neto is cup tied. He played for Bournemouth early in this competition, so Raya is expected to be available. He did limp off after the Man City game and he made 9 saves in that particular match, but I think he's the best goalkeeper in FPL. He'll probably keep the most clean sheets and be right up there in terms of FPL points scored. Only Jordan Pickford outscored him last season in the Premier League, and Raya missed a handful of games, all 2 matches against Brentford, as well as the first 3 or 4 matches of the season. And he had a bit of a shaky start, but overall a solid season, winning the Golden Glove. And this time round, he's looking like a man possessed, making countless saves. Arsenal are maybe a bit weaker defensively so far this season, conceding more shots and chances. But in 2 matches against Brighton and Man City, they did go down to 10 men, which may have influenced the lack of possession and also the amount of shots conceded. But that only helps Raya to get a lot of FPL points in the process. The backup goalkeeper will be Valdemarsson. You could also go for Fabianski. They're probably the 2 best 4 million goalkeepers with the best chance of starting from time to time. But ultimately, we don't have a 4 million starting goalkeeper like we did in the last campaign with Dubravka and Areola. Liverpool's fixtures may turn for the worse very soon, but Trent Alexander-Arnold is still worth that steep price tag of 7.1 million. Only Gabriel has outscored him amongst defenders, and Liverpool have kept so many clean sheets so far this season. Only the 1 goal conceded, which came against Nottingham Forest. Their underlying defensive numbers are also very solid. I think over the course of the campaign, with tougher fixtures, these numbers will decline, and they'll ultimately have the 2nd or 3rd best defence. But with Trent's bonus points potential, the assist threat, and the occasional goal, I think he's well worth that money, and I'd highly recommend him. He's probably my favourite Liverpool asset on the wildcard, even over Luis Diaz and Mohamed Salah. Next up is Gabriel, who has scored in back-to-back weeks against Tottenham and Man City. So in terms of away grounds, he only has Old Trafford to kind of tick off the box and the checklist. He has scored at Stamford Bridge, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the Etihad and Anfield. He has a man of big moments. He wasn't great in the first 10-20 minutes of that game against City, but afterwards he stepped up big time, especially when Arsenal were really under the cosh in the second half and defending for the entirety of the 45 to 55 minutes. I think Gabriel is a superb defender, and in terms of goal scoring, you're not going to get better prospects from a centre-back. As I've mentioned before, he is the highest scoring defender in Europe's top 5 divisions in the last couple of years, dating back to 2021, and in the Premier League, this goes back a year further to 2020 when he first joined the Gunners in that move from Lille. He is one of the best centre-backs in world football, and that partnership with Saliba is absolutely sensational. Next up, this may surprise you a little bit, but he has gone down to 4.3 million in price, and Everton's fixtures are fantastic until Game Week 14 in early December. So I think Mykolenko is still worth a shot as your 4th or 5th defender, but I can understand why some of you may be hesitant to go in this direction, as Everton are 19th in the Premier League table. They got the first point of the season against Leicester in a 1-1 draw, but they just really haven't been convincing, and they've really fumbled a few 2-0 leads in the process. But I think the clean sheets will come once Branthwaite returns from his injury, and he has played for the under-21s, building up that fitness, and Mykolenko's illness isn't too severe. He was close to making it over the weekend, but just about fell short. He should be available for Game Week 6, and the same goes for Branthwaite, who possibly could make it back by Game Week 7 if he can't make it this weekend. But these will be massive boosts for Everton, and I think the clean sheets will come very soon. They also had this kind of pattern last season, starting very poorly and then growing into the season gradually and keeping the 2nd most clean sheets, only behind Arsenal. Now, the final 2 defenders is very interesting. I'm going to go for 4.5 million options or players around this price tag, and one of them is Mazraoui. he is my favourite Man United defender, and even back in Game Week 1, he produced a very healthy return on his debut. He's actually played fairly well, but the big doubt with him would be, will he drop to the bench once Luke Shaw is back? And that is always a possibility, but Luke Shaw's fitness has been disastrous in the last couple of seasons, and I think Mazraoui has performed better than Dalot, who, to be fair, has played out of position, but based on current form, I think it'd be very harsh to drop Mazraoui, and he should be in the starting 11 100% for the next 2-3 weeks at the very least. And once Shaw is back in early to mid-October, which is the projected timeline at the moment, then we can reassess the situation, and maybe Lisandro Martinez at 4.5 million or De Ligt would be better purchases. And don't forget Onana, who makes a lot of saves and he's right up there in terms of the highest scoring goalkeepers in the game right now. But my favourite way of carrying Man United defensively will be Mazraoui, who can get the odd bonus points and also a few assists throughout the campaign. And United are looking better this season. They're a bit unlucky not to win against Crystal Palace in that 0-0 draw. So I think Mazraoui is definitely worth considering at 4.6 million. Now the final defender is Milenkovic, but you can go for Aina from Nottingham Forest, who has 5 bonus points for the season, and he can play on both flanks, either as a left back or on the right hand side. But I think Milenkovic could get a few goals this season. He is a big presence from aerial situations, and he amassed 0.98 XG against Southampton a few weeks ago, which is massive, and I could see him scoring a few goals this season, getting clean sheets, and Forest have been really solid in this new campaign. They're only one of a handful of teams who are still unbeaten, including Brighton, Man City and Arsenal, and their defensive numbers are right up there amongst the very best. So you can go for Aina if you wish. I don't really mind that as much, so either pick Milenkovic or Aina as your 4th or 5th defender, but ultimately this defensive line is very solid. They combine very well in terms of fixtures, and several clean sheets will be kept. Luis Diaz is in blistering form at the moment with 4 double-digit hauls for the season. He's outscoring the likes of Mohamed Salah. He is the highest scoring midfielder in FPL at the moment after all, and only Erling Haaland has scored more amongst all positions in the game. So Luis Diaz is certainly worth considering, but there's always going to be some potential issues, especially with minutes, as you've got Gakpo and Darwin Núñez knocking on the door. In the case of Diaz, the main competition is Gakpo, and we saw this rotation happen in the Champions League. So Diaz was benched for that 3-1 victory against AC Milan, and over the weekend it was Jota being sacrificed for Darwin Núñez. So I can't guarantee you that Diaz will start every single Premier League game, and he can be fairly inconsistent, but under Arne Slot, I think he's getting the very best of the Colombian, who's got 7 big chances for the season, and I highlighted his stats in detail in the Transfers podcast, so be sure to check that out to see the 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip ahead of Game Week 6. Next up is going to be a very simple one in Bukayo Saka, who is one of 2 players to have not blanked so far this season alongside Erling Haaland, and he's actually produced an assist in his first 5 Premier League matches. He's actually the second player to do this in the competition's history, and the first to do it was a certain Thierry Henry. So Saka is an esteemed company. He's well worth that 10 million price tag, but Arsenal aren't clicking offensively, you could argue. They scored twice at Man City and really controlled the end of the first half. Then they had to defend considering the circumstances, but I'd much rather double up on the Gunners defensively than go for Saka and Havertz at the same time. You can still do this with the easier fixtures, but my recommendation in the long term would be Raya, Gabriel. You could also go for Saliba if you wish instead of Gabriel, and I'd go for Saka. That is the best Arsenal triple up you can go for in terms of Game Week 6 and beyond. Now, the third midfielder I'm going for is a very honest and simple one, I'd say. Bryan Mbeumo was a top recommendation from me in the Transfers podcast, and at 7.2 million, you can't get better than this. You do have Jarrod Bowen at a similar price, but he's more expensive, and West Ham haven't filled with confidence so far this season, but Mbeumo has scored 4 times already, and I think his underlying numbers are fairly decent. He's on penalties, so I'd really recommend Mbeumo. He is the best mid-price midfielder at this moment in time. I still like Eze, but he isn't really scoring or assisting enough in the Premier League in this new campaign. Now, I've got 2 budget midfielders to wrap up this midfield, and one of them is Semenyo, who faces Southampton at home and Leicester away. Then you've got some very tough games for a little bit, but afterwards Bournemouth's fixtures do get better in the long term, and Semenyo is one of the best budget midfielders in the game right now. But there's so much competition, as you've got McNeil at a similar price, Morgan Rogers, and a certain Emil Smith-Rowe, who's been in fantastic form for Fulham. Adama Traore's had a good start to the season, even Amadou Onana. But I'm going to go for Emil Smith-Rowe as the 5th and final midfielder at the moment, and I think this balance looks really strong. You could argue you'd want one more premium in this position like Cole Palmer or Mohamed Salah, and I certainly understand that, but with this balance, I think you've got a well-rounded 15-man squad, and you've got so many budget midfielders performing right now that you can switch from one to the other. Despite Fulham's fixtures turning for the worse, I can see Emil Smith-Rowe still delivering very well for his new club. Chris Wood has been one of my best picks in FPL so far this season. I started the campaign with him in Game Week 1, he delivered me 9 points, and even in Game Week 5, he came off the bench to deliver 8 points overall. He is scoring very consistently, but I do admit, against Brighton, he didn't do much apart from that penalty, but that could be another big plus, and another reason why he's one of the best budget forwards in the game right now, with that price tag of 6.1 million, but this is another position and price tag which is so competitive. You've got the likes of Joao Pedro and Welbeck, who've had a good start to the season, particularly in the case of Danny Welbeck. You've also got Calvert-Lewin and Jamie Vardy, not to mention a few others around this price. Wissa would have been one of them, and he was going to be a lock on this Game Week 6 wildcard, but unfortunately, he's out for the next couple of months. Raul Jimenez is in great form as well. But next up will be Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I really think Everton are worth targeting because of the fixtures. I know their form is terrible. Ndai would be another shout, by the way, but I'd rather go for Calvert-Lewin, who's on penalties, and he'll get the bulk of the chances for the Toffees. And if I had to pick between Calvert-Lewin and Vardy, it is close, but I would go for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as I discussed in the Game Week 5 deadline stream over the weekend. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. We have so many options for budget midfielders and forwards this season, and I think it will ebb and flow throughout the campaign. But the third and final forward and the 15th player of this 50-man squad is none other than Erling Haaland, who hasn't blanked so far this season. 9 points against Arsenal. He just keeps on scoring. The stats are simply ridiculous, not just the goals, and that's in fact 10 goals in just 5 matches, but it's also the stats in terms of XG, big chances. He's going to have a terrific season if he can stay fit, and it wouldn't surprise me if he scored 40 plus Premier League goals this season. So he's well worth that 50 million price tag, but you could argue that on the wild card, you can go without him and build an even more balanced 15-man squad, and I will show this in the updated wildcard podcast to give you the ultimate coverage for Game Week 6. So that wraps things up for the best wildcard team in terms of building it, but we have to also discuss the starting 11, the captaincy, and see what the algorithms are suggesting. There isn't much of a choice between the sticks. David Raya is the best goalkeeper in FPL anyway, in my opinion, based on current form, the clean sheet potential, and the fixtures, at least in the immediate short term, because from Game Weeks 9 to 11, there is a very tough period for Arsenal, and then you've got a fantastic run up until April. But this double up in the Arsenal defence against Leicester and Southampton at home back-to-back looks really promising on paper, with Raya, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Gabriel, and Mikalenko, so plenty of home fixtures in this defensive line. And in the case of Trent Alexander-Arnold, he is away to the worst team in the Premier League so far this season, and Wolves only have 1 victory in the last 15 matches in this competition, dating back to last season. The midfield has Saka, Diaz, Semenyo, and Mbeumo. Plenty of home fixtures here as well, and Luis Diaz is in sensational form, and the front line comprises of Wood, Calvert-Lewin, and Erling Haaland, and the bench has Valdimarsson, Smith-Rowe, Milenkovic, and Mazraoui, and you could easily start Emil Smith-Rowe over Chris Wood potentially, or possibly one of Calvert-Lewin, maybe even Semenyo, but I really like the starting 11. The expected points is 60.7, and another popular 4-point family defender would be Konsa, and that would actually increase the expected points to 61 according to the FPL.team algorithm, so be sure to check this website out. It is very crucial in terms of planning ahead and visualizing your team in future game weeks. But let's now discuss the captaincy very briefly. I'd go for Erling Haaland still, but if you do go for Salah on the Game Week 6 wildcard, I'm still very fond of that particular move away to Wolves. I don't even mind Diaz as a shout, and Saka at home to Leicester looks like a fantastic option despite the absence of Martin Odegaard, who reportedly will only be out for a few more weeks according to Mikel Arteta. Now that could still mean up to 8 weeks, which would be 2 months, but it looks like it's not as serious as it was discussed before. But we can't look too much into these press conferences sometimes, and honestly, I wouldn't expect the likes of Mikel Merino or Martin Odegaard to return until after the international break in Game Week 8. but even without these two key players in the midfield, and I think they'll make a massive difference to the Gunners in terms of chance creation and controlling games, I still think Saka can produce massive hauls against Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth coming right up. But I would go for Erling Haaland as the captain. Let's now go over to Drafthound. There is a link in the description below, and we'll see what they're talking about for the best wildcard team in Game Week 6. Every single week, Drafthound build the best wildcard and free hit team, and they've gone for Dean Henderson in goal with Gabriel, Keane and Vandenberg, with Salah, Diaz, Saka and Harvey Barnes, Haaland, Wood and Calvert-Lewin. So in fact, we've gone for the exact same front three. We've also gone for some similarities in terms of Saka and Diaz. They've gone for Salah, which is a great top tip, but unfortunately, it does require some compromises in the other positions. They've also gone for an Everton defender, but I wouldn't recommend Keane, as he'll drop out of the squad once Branthwaite returns from his injury. And they've also gone for Gabriel, so the rest will be very different. Muric, Dibbling, O'Shea, Antoine Zabi. I think that Dibbling shout is fantastic. If you're looking for a 4-point family midfielder, you're not going to get better than Dibbling, who is Southampton's most exciting player. He is so young with so much potential, and he's only going to get better with more game time. And even going to 4-point family and forwards, you're not going to get anywhere near the value and the returns as you would from Dibbling as your 5th midfielder. So I do like that, and the Muric pick. Not so much of O'Shea, Antoine Zabi, to be quite honest with you, but as I said, we are in complete agreement with the front three. There are so many options that you can go for, like Jackson, Solanke, and a few others I haven't even mentioned, like Watkins and Kai Havertz, but it all depends on what sort of team structure you're aiming for. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as always, and thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this to 300 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, for latest FPL and news fantasy updates. Check the Discord server, be sure to join that as well. The FPL League is also free to join, and your points from Game Week 1 will still be added. There's also my Patreon and the channel memberships, so clicking the join button on YouTube allows you to become a channel member, and on Patreon it's patreon.com/DylanRCM. Also check out my Spotify and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to support my channel, and there is a link to Drafthound, as I mentioned earlier. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 6 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.